I'm Jessica Crawford, here at the Hilton Hotel of the University of Houston, where we interviewed Jamaal Smith, a candidate for Representative District 137. Let's see what he had to say. So when did you first see that you were interested in politics?
Okay, I started at about 16 years old. I had a neighbor who was a justice of the peace, a judge, and a good friend, and my high school principal decided that he wanted to run against him. Me and my high school principal didn't get along and see eye to eye all the time. I was a little mischievous, but I thought my neighbor deserved to retire, and he was 2 years away from retiring, and he would let my principal take over. And so essentially, I volunteered to run my neighbor's campaign, and we were successful, basically, with the homegrown, grassroots, selling cookies, having car washes, bake sales campaign. We won by 17 votes.
Wow. So what did that entail for a 16-year-old? Like, what all did you have to do to, first of all, make the decision that you were going to do that, and then second of all, have people respect you enough to want to help you with this campaign at such a young age?
It honestly really matured me as a young man. Before that, I was not the most responsible person in the world, but it was a lot of fun, and it also let me know that no matter how big politics get, there's millions of dollars spent on elections these days, it's still very neighbor to neighbor, people to people, and every vote matters. So for me, my judge, in this case my neighbor, Mr. Dexter, he gave me a list of phone numbers of supporters to call, people who had always supported him. And so we had a house party at his house, and then I called neighbors, and I arranged it. My aunts, I have 6 aunts, they did the cooking for me for free.
Oh, that's great.
So they in-kinded it to our campaign. A lot of my friends, I ran cross-country track, so the whole track team volunteered to block walk and make phone calls. I wrote all the scripts, he edited the scripts, and then they needed a lot of editing, as they do now probably if I chose to draft my own. And we just knocked on our neighbors' doors and told them to come out, and it really inspired me because it let me know one person can make a very big difference, and that's the beauty of our electoral system.
So you mentioned being outspent in this campaign. Well, as everyone knows, there is a financial crisis going on, especially with the education system in Texas. What are your views on that, and how can you fix it?
Okay, I think you have to, when talking about the education system in Texas, you also have to lump in public finance, because how we finance our education system kind of causes the problems. My philosophy in public policy is focus on what's worked in the past as your guide. What's working now is for statistics and data and theories and common sense. And frankly, if we ran our households, or you ran your personal bank account the way the state attempts to run our public education, you would go broke, bankrupt, and your creditors would be knocking down your door. So the first thing we have to do is finance our school system correctly. Now there's a direct correlation in Texas on the value of a child's education being tied to the market value of the neighborhood that they live in. And that is inherently unfair. Every child, in my belief, and I think most Texans believe, that every child deserves a chance for a proper education. We have evidence that 22 to 1, a ratio of 22 to 1 students to teachers, especially from pre-K to 4th grade, makes a huge difference on test scores, math, science, for students. However, HISD leads the state in exemptions because of a lack of finances. So we have teachers that for 2 months at a time can have as many as 40 to 45 students.
Wow.
They're not going to be as effective learning, and a child isn't going to get as much education, one-on-one focus. Also, with the standardized testing system, which in itself is not wrong or bad, because the purpose is accountability for teachers. I just think we've gone a little bit too far as far as accountability, and we have teachers teaching to the test because that's what they're judged on instead of educating our children. Also, it has the impact that those students that need the most help often don't get it because the teacher can't. He or she has to go with the majority of the class to make sure they make their minimum numbers. That's just not a good way to go forward with our public education system.
Okay, well, Hochberg was seen as kind of a genius of funding education. And you mentioned earlier that we have to finance education the right way or the correct way. What is the correct way? What will you cut? How will you get money? Where will you spend the money? And how much money do you think from those methods is going to go back to the schools?
Okay. Great question. And Representative Hochberg definitely was seen as the leading expert on public finance and public education in Texas, and so these are huge shoes to fill. My feeling is there's a long-term solution and there's a short-term solution. In the Texas legislature, it's a numbers game, basically. I'm a progressive Democrat. This is a Democratic seat. Representative Hochberg was a progressive Democrat. Democrats are actually in the minority in the state of Texas. There's a Republican supermajority, in fact, and they have different views on ideology. So I think one thing that was common and is bipartisan, people don't want increased property taxes, which is the main revenue stream that we use to fund public education. They don't want to increase those property taxes, and it's unfair to homeowners to ask them every time we need more money for education to go back and say, give more money.
Okay, well, continuing in this theme of education, you've mentioned that you are against abstinence-only curriculum.
I wouldn't say that I'm against abstinence-only curriculum. I would say, to me, it's. I believe that you should teach everything, and if you're just teaching abstinence only, I don't think you're effectively preparing our young people to go forward with their lives and make personal and responsible decisions about their lives. I'm a supporter of Planned Parenthood, and for young people, I think it's very important for them to get a complete personal responsibility lesson on life. Okay, abstinence only education, as it's taught now, tends to say, okay, don't do that. Okay, but statistics show that there are a lot of young people. Texas leads the nation in the number of teenage pregnancies. Well, clearly, we need to educate those folks as well, so they don't have more children, they aren't practicing unsafe sex, and they don't further endanger themselves, because now they're young parents. So if something clearly isn't working, I don't think you can just stick with one thing. You have to teach about personal responsibility and not just say, oh, abstinence is the only way. I just think that's what you strive for, but that's not the only way to do it, I guess is what I would say.
Okay, well, speaking of the diversity of your district, Barack Obama has recently called for an overhaul immigration policy in which he wants to stop deporting most young immigrants who do not pose a threat and who are not breaking laws. How do you feel about that?
I 100% support it, and I want to be clear about what he did with amnesty and how it actually is very much in line with what Republicans and Democrats have said that they wanted. The DREAM Act is something that allows here in the state of Texas, even our governor, who is on the other side of the aisle than I am, but has supported in the past. They couldn't get the DREAM Act through Congress.
So what is the DREAM Act?
Okay, the DREAM Act allows it basically doesn't punish young people for the decisions that their parents make. For instance, if my wife and I immigrated to Canada illegally and we brought along our 2-year-old, I have no children, but if we brought along our 2-year-old and he or she grew up in the system, it allows him to go to school there, and we're talking about in Texas, to go to school in Texas for not an international fee or rate, but for a local rate, because this person was educated right here in Houston or locally in Dallas, et cetera, in Texas schools, and they shouldn't be punished for something that their parents did, essentially. And so
They should be able
everybody
to
has
attend a university in the area.
exactly, and for the same amount of money that other local residents are allowed to, despite their status as non-citizens at that moment. And so what he has done is provide an amnesty to folks. It's very specific and narrow as well. So it's not blanket immigration reform. It's saying that if you're a young person, if you stayed out of trouble, and you basically attended school, you've never been arrested for a crime, then you should be able to go out and contribute and work in the job market. And it's a great thing for the local economy and the Texas economy, because as I mentioned, a lot of young people take advantage of that. They attend University of Houston, they attend Texas Southern University, UT, Texas A&M, and then when they get into the job market, they can't get jobs because, especially on their training, because of their immigration status. Well, he's rolled that back. So now they will get jobs that they're trained for, and they will pay taxes into the system, so we don't have to raise taxes. They will raise children, they will shop at stores, they will buy boats, they will buy homes, and everybody is better off for it. So on every level, I support the president's decision, and I also think it's an example of having a president now that is solution-oriented and bold in trying to tackle the challenges that we face.
Okay, so what will you bring to this position that Gene Wu won't?
First, I think we have slightly different ideology. As I said, I'm a progressive Democrat, and he's more of a conservative Democrat. He has some history. His legislative experience is working on the other side of the aisle with the Republicans. Also, his work experience is more as a prosecutor, or mine is on criminal justice reform with the state senator. But most importantly, I think the distinction is my Democratic legislative experience, my Democratic leadership, and my work experience is greater than his, even though he's a little bit older than me. I started working while he was in school. I was the executive director of the Harris County Democratic Party for 5 years. I ran the coordinated campaign for President Obama's campaign here in Harris County in 2008. I ran the field portion. I was the deputy campaign manager. I was the campaign manager for the local Democratic straight ticket portion for Bill White here in 2010. But before that, I was the legislative director for the late state representative Joe Moreno for 5 years. So I can hit the ground running on day one. I've filed bills, I've drafted bills, I've done the research, I've brought interest groups together, I've passed them out of committee on the House floor and seen how the process works up close. Most recently, before I went to attended law school, I worked for State Senator Rodney Ellis, as I mentioned before, and again, I studied public policy for him. Studied bills and recommended, his positions on those bills. So I just have a direct experience where I can hit the ground running. Also, I live in the district. I didn't need to move into the district, so it's my neighborhood, it's my community. I have a personal vested interest. My children will attend those schools when I have some, and those are my neighbors. So that's my advocacy for my candidacy. It's not against his. I think he's a good man, and I would support him in other races. But just in this race, he's my second favorite candidate.